Let's now talk about assimilation, accommodation, and cultural capital, which may be used to develop positive discourses about deprived communities or groups in a society. Bartlett research has given us the views how these strategies may be used to develop positive discourses, because sometimes it's not possible to develop new discourses all the time. In such situations, we can use the already dominant discourses and change them, reframe them in a way that they become useful for the less dominant or for the deprived groups or minority groups of a society. Therefore, in this way, the legitimization of marginalized voice was a function of their assimilation to and accommodation of the prevalent patterns of the dominant group. Bartlett was of the view that the dominant discourses are not legitimately available to many people all the time. They're exclusive. Therefore, we can change them, reframe them, or modify them in a way that they become useful, or they become the mouthpiece of the local minority groups also, or less deprived or powerless groups also. In this way, we can generate a positive discourse for less privileged people, while also using the resources available in the discourses of dominant groups. This is a kind of very interesting strategy. According to Bartlett, the affirmative or positive discourse may take many forms, which are available to us, and a purview of CDA in relation to PDA, positive discourse analysis, may include the documentation of minority discourses, diasporic voices, text and statements that are written out and over by the dominant institutions. And we can reframe, change, reanalyze, reinterpret those written out statements and make them feasible as well as useful for the minority or diasporic groups. Similarly, the emergent discourses of hybrid identity, which are produced by the minority groups or marginal groups in a society, can be used to counter to dominant pedagogic and or other discourses. So the discourses of hybrid identities of less privileged marginal groups can be promoted through positive discourse analysis. Then we can also, interestingly, can include idiosyncratic local optics where human subjects take centrally broadcast or dominant text and discourses. And these dominant discourses can be reinterpreted, recycled, and revoiced in certain ways to represent local political interests or political interest of the marginalized groups. This may involve translating an external text or resource into locally amenable terms, locally understandable terms, and this way, such text can become useful for these local groups. Those micro-political strategies of interruption, resistance, and counter-discourse undertaken by the speakers in face-to-face institutional and interpersonal settings. So these counter-discourses of resistance and interruption may also be included. Bartlett work provides us a sociocultural explanation for the change in relation to various speakers, the sociocultural identity, as well as in relating to discourse practices in general, and how could they be employed in specific context of marginalized people. Overall, this gives us a kind of suggestion and a vaguely defined framework to use popular discourses, dominant discourses for the less privileged, marginalized people or minority groups in more specific terms. According to him, working with the individuals and groups involved is a further desirable element of positive discourse analysis. He argues that if we do not involve the minority groups or the less privileged groups, which are the target of a positive discourse analysis or the production of positive discourse, into the making and the spread of that discourse, probably we are not serving the cause with genuine intentions. Also, in this regard, the author also has criticized development organizations for not involving local communities in their analysis and decision making. The question was raised that most of development organizations make their own policies without taking into account the specific sensitivities of the local communities they aim to serve. Therefore, it was suggested that the development discourse in a particular area should be developed with the help of local people to which these discourses would represent and serve. So, PDA in short can be seen or can take help from the strategies like assimilation and accommodation of popular dominant discourses, and they can be turned into a cultural capital of the less privileged or marginalized groups of a society also.